Welcome back, everybody. If you are lost, this is actually the Breaking Down Security podcast, and Security Weekly's down the street. No, I'm just kidding. This is Brian and Ms. Berlin and Mr. Betcher for Breaking Down Security. Welcome.
What up?
Hello.
Yeah, so if you're listening to this on Monday, March 19th, you are now on the 39th trip around the world with me, around the earth, or the sun.
What?
Yeah!
Happy birthday.
My mother spat me out of her loins at about 4:32 yesterday, or tomorrow. So it's lovely.
Oh, interesting.
Nah. Well, it's a lovely visual. I'm sure. But
tell us more.
Yeah. Well, my mother says that it was a horrendous ordeal, and it was like passing a watermelon through a garden hose. So
that's birth in general.
Huge noggin. Yeah. So I promised our guests. We have multiple guests this week that I wouldn't be doing any small talk, but I broke that rule. I'm sorry. So a little background.
Who doesn't like small talk?
Well, I know.
That's the whole reason you brought me on, I think.
No. Yes, actually, somewhat. So I want to give some background to why we have our two guests on tonight. Last Friday, a week ago Friday, I was sitting here at work, which is at home, and I was thinking about how companies do job placement and job descriptions, and the fact that there's not really any good ways of doing internships. And we've talked about this on the show before with Mr. Liam Graves last year. There'll be a link in the show notes to that show about mentorships and internships that the government's trying to help retool people. But, I just put out a tweet and I added this hashtag infosec intern, and a lot of people started jumping on it and was trying to give it some visibility, and I appreciate that. And people were posting jobs, and I added the infosec jobs tweet hashtag to it. But it got me to thinking about how companies should be creating, at least if they're pen testers or if they're blue team folk, creating the intern or the journeyman type position where if people are wanting to retool or move, laterally move into a new job, let's say they're a developer or something, and they want to move into doing more red team or blue team stuff, how would they, go do that? So our first guest that I'm going to introduce reached out and said, hey, our company does that. And I said, excellent. We always like having you on. And that's Mr. Jay Beale. He works at In Guardians. Welcome.
Woohoo.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome. And also, during that whole thing on Twitter, a second person reached out and said, hey, we do this at our company, and I also teach college classes, and I help new graduates, find jobs, and he loves helping with internships and mentorships. And so we had Brad. Oh man, I didn't test this name before I did. Brad Ammerman.
Sounds about right.
Oh God, that means it was wrong.
No, that's
it's
good.
close enough.
Okay. So for those of you who don't know Brad, he's better known as sno0ose on Twitter. So welcome, Dr. sno0ose, actually. Doc sno0ose on Twitter, his handle. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So we'll go in reverse order. Mr. sno0ose, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to started in the infosec world?
My start was actually rather weird. I was a combat medic. I got out of the military and got hired on as a web developer. And my boss at the time told me I should look at network security. Started doing that. He went and took a job at the Denver International Airport, pulled me over a year later, and it just took off from there.
Fantastic. Okay. And where is it that you work at this point in time?
I'm currently the principal security consultant over at Foresight.
Okay. Excellent. And Mr. Beale, of course, we've had him on the show a few times, but if you want to give an introduction, please do so, sir.
Sure. I think I'll skip my origin story. That's in a past podcast episode. You can find. But my name's Jay Beale. I'm at InGuardians as their CTO and Chief Operating Officer. So it's InGuardians is a long-standing information security consultancy, and we do a lot of red teaming and pen tests and other security stuff.
Excellent.
It's really fun.
Excellent. So I just want to go ahead and get into it because we do have another topic that I thought of as well that Mr. Beale and I were talking about if this ends up going short, but I doubt it will. So one of the things that was getting me was, I have a friend, and he's currently in a blue team type position. And what he wanted to do was to figure out how to move into a different sector or a new area. In this case, he can't be a red teamer. And I've had lunch with him a few times, and he said he can't be a red teamer. His heart's not in it. And that seems to be the only way that his career is progressing. And he was trying to retool into another area, being like a security project manager or a security architect. And so I was talking to him, and that's somewhat got me to the infosec intern thing. And, he wants to know how to retool, and he wanted to find out if there were any good ways to seg from, say, blue team or red team into different groups. And some of the show notes that we've got here, talking about various jobs that are good segues. But maybe Jay, we'll start with you this time. How do you handle people who maybe apply to your company and say, "Hey, I think I'd be really good at this, but I'm a security PM, for instance, or I'm a project manager, but I'd like to do more technical work."
Sure. So it's a good question. We actually just added someone with strong management background to our team just this last week. We had a guy named Dan Weiss, and he is he's been a CIO of a large IT department before, and he's also got a ton of SANS courses under his belt and a bunch of experience doing what we call security architecture review, looking at the whole state of the company or looking at the whole state of a product or a network or what have you, and saying, okay, well, here are all the things that I would do to make it stronger, and he joined, and normally, and he's joined on as a managing security consultant. That said, he's his experience, he's probably the first person that we've hired either ever in a long time who doesn't have a ton of attack background. So he's all blue, and in our case, we were really eager to get him because we wanted to start scaling some of how we run engagements, so that instead of our current model, honestly, is that every team of consultants for an engagement has a consultant who's in charge of that. We call it an AIC, an agent in charge, and that AIC does a whole bunch of the work of managing the engagement, of setting it up, of closing it down, of doing the conversations with the client, whether they're weekly or daily or just at start and end. And we said, wow, that we could make this a little bit easier on the AICs, and if we were to bring someone in who has that kind of project management experience, who has the management experience, and yet can talk and say, okay, I know, here's what here's the team's doing, and can do so at a deep technical level, but wouldn't necessarily be somebody that would get onto that same kind of attack engagement as one of the full-fledged attackers. And that's our experience. Our experience has been good. It's been a short time, but in the last week of having him on the team, everyone's just ecstatic and saying, wow, we probably should have done this a while back. So, Yeah, I think in consulting companies, we can pretty quickly pigeonhole ourselves to basically hiring the same person or variants of the same role over and over again. And so one of the pieces of advice I'd give to anybody if they're thinking about switching roles is, if they're like, well, I'd want to switch roles, but I'm worried my skills in that other area won't be strong enough, is go and talk to, whether it's us or another company, go and talk to the other company anyway and see if there's a fit. I think the better way for me to describe it would be, see if you can describe a vision, a narrative, a story of what that role might look like, of how you can help. And then find yourself co-creating that vision. You may find that that whoever you're talking to says, that's kind of cool, but what if it was like this? And, at the end of that conversation, you might either say, wow, this is awesome. Or you're like, wow, okay, I have another variant. I have another way to approach what I'm looking for. And I think that's really valuable.
And then I think if you try and have that conversation with somebody and they're not open to anything like that at all, that's probably another hint, maybe, to find someone else.
Yeah, it's a good fit. I agree. I mean, the point where they say I'm not into it, or they're, where you're seeing that they're not into it, it means the two things I'd say is, first, practice abundance. Go talk to other people. You will find someone who's into your idea. And that's it's something you hear about all the time. I mean, I was just listening earlier today to an interview with to a recent interview with Jeff Bezos, and he said when he was trying to fund Amazon, he was trying to put together $1 million of angel funding, and so he was looking for people to put in $50,000. He got 20 people to do that, and they're probably all incredibly rich now, because I think they each got 1% of the company, and Amazon's kind of valuable now, but to get those 20 yeses, he talked to 60 people. So 2 out of 3 said no. And part of what he was saying was, listen, just keep trying. Just ask more people. You'll find someone who's into your idea. I guess the other piece of advice I'd say is, just because it was a no, maybe it was even a violent no right now. No, we would never want someone in that role, talk to them again in 6 months or a year, and they might say, actually, we're really looking for someone right now who matches that description. And you're like, what happened? They're like, well, the situations change.
Or you planted a seed and they kept thinking about it.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yep. So Mr. sno0ose, Dr. sno0ose, one of the other things you had mentioned was that you teach at a university, and that that gives you a pipeline by which you can steer people to either other people in the industry or yourself or your company. How is that helpful for you to find people who are right out of college or looking for internships for positions?
It's honestly been great. Just recently, I've hired my 3rd prior student, and coming in June, I'll have my 4th under my belt. Having the ability to get in front of people on a daily basis, or at least a weekly basis, and get them excited about security, whether it's red team or blue team, that's not my concern, since I focus, completely on red team for my job position. But as long as they understand it and make it used daily. So it's not just, hey, I'm going to educate you and you can use this for going into a career. It's, hey, let's get your mindset changed. And after that, if you're interested, let's go further. So the way I do it, at least when I'm teaching, I have classes that are now being talked about, I think this coming next semester, not the summertime, but the following one. They want me to have 60 people in my class.
Wow.
When I first started, I had 10. And there's been this connection that I've had with the students for some reason that it's just grown to where they just specifically want me to teach this class. And I think a good majority of it that has happened because of the fact that I offer them the ability to learn out of class.
Right.
I open my home up to them to come and learn the things that I can't teach because I have a set curriculum. And that set curriculum is kind of binding to where I can't show them the really cool stuff.
Right.
And I have a lot of them that want to learn the really cool stuff. I'm pretty sure you guys got friends that want to learn it and have the tools and the free training that is out there, but just don't know how to find it or have the resources to do it. So I give that to them, and literally you see these kids' eyes just open up. I mean, it's insane, and it's great feeling when, you know, there's some dude who's in computer engineering, but he took my class as an elective, and he's like, oh man, this sounds like a lot more fun.
Right.
I mean, a big driver that I tell them is money, but you can make money in any industry. But when I get to go, and I just recently did a high school thing, and my banner, because it was just me, was a wooden sign that I was like, if you want to learn how or know how to break into things legally, come talk to me. And it was just handwritten. And I was probably the number one person that students remembered based on the surveys that were sent out after.
It sounds like there was a fair bit of marketing there, maybe a bit of a spin. Like, hey, I've broken into banks. Ask me more, or that kind of thing.
Pretty much. I mean, I had my grappling hook there and they're like, "What is this for?" And I'm like, "Well, if it's only a 2-story building, I'll risk falling off of it."
Wow. Okay. You haven't fallen off, then, I would imagine.
No.
Good.
Yet.
It's a solid grappling
I've
hook.
only had, honestly, I used my grappling hook one time, and it was to pull a fire escape down.
Oh, okay. Very nice. So
and it worked.
Go ahead.
But another thing is, I completely agree with Jay. We just recently hired a lawyer and put her on our GRC team.
Oh.
And now I brought up the idea of, hey, since we have a lawyer, why couldn't we have a service offering that we will do your policies and procedures for you so you don't have to worry about that headache? So going outside of the realm of just people in IT is stellar. I hire people with zero IT experience because I can teach the technical.
Right.
And what I can't teach is the problem solving. And I got this question from Chris Roberts. And what I always ask my students is, tell me 10 different ways how to get coffee out of a cup without drinking it.
Okay.
And they look confuzzled all the time, but I give them a minute to think. And once they start rolling, then that problem-solving skill comes in. I can't teach problem-solving. I can teach IT. I can send you to trainings all day long. But if you can't do basic troubleshooting, I can't really help you.
Yeah. So one of the things is, both of you have given me examples of the journeyman thing, and also Dr. sno0ose has given us an example of the intern side. When I created that infosec intern, it was the idea of the people who were unskilled. But then I was like, well, there's tons of people out there who are trying to move over because they're unhappy with their current line of work, or they have a CS degree. Like Mr. Betcher, he's he was an infosec guy. He was a code guy. Now he's an infosec guy. Now he's kind of both. He's retooled again back into being more of a developer kind of thing when he's not doing IR. How can people who are already skilled in something find an outlet for this? Because a lot of them don't know. I mean, some of these people who are probably in physical security or code development, they're not listening to the show. But how do we as a companies, and I'm talking to Jay, who's the owner of a company, and Dr. sno0ose, who works for one, how do we reach out to those people if they don't know that infosec maybe exists and could work for them? I mean, because part of it's recruiting, but I mean, how do we get them to bridge that gap and come over to our side?
Sure. So that's a really good question. I think that let me see how to frame this. So at Guardians, what we're kind of known for is that when we put a team together, our employees that are working on projects, they're all really solid. I mean, in essence, we're basically staffing our engagements and have been for 14 years, basically with people with senior level knowledge. And so that, of course, makes, for me, the participation in this conversation pretty interesting. And, so I was talking with a couple of the other founders, Mike Poor and Jimmy Alderson over here, and saying, I want to talk about how we bring people up. And part of it for us is that everybody who walks in the door has something that they're very strong at, that they are senior at, and yet they also have a number of things they're going to learn. I mean, the part of our initial model was, we're bringing in people like Tom Liston at the very beginning, where you've got somebody with years in infosec, and you're like, okay, one of the biggest jobs that we have as a company, as somebody's boss, is to progress them, is to mentor them, is to make sure that they get mentored by other people throughout the group. And what we found is, honestly, we mentor each other. Every single one of us comes in as a junior in some aspect or another, and we build each other up, and it raises all of our games. So, we have a guy who came in. Tom's a great example. Tom's came in. He's written a bunch of tools back in the day. He wrote the La Brea tar pit that was specifically designed to stop the spread of code red again in a company by slowing it the heck down. And he does a great job at tool development. He does a great job at reporting. And then, and yet, we really need a hardware hacker. And, we have a number of hardware hackers. And so that became something where, we said, okay, we're going to create more hardware hackers, and we're going to create our internal training program. We didn't have the kind of training budgets. And to be honest, at the time that we were doing this with Tom, there really weren't classes to take anyway. So it was okay. Let's talk to our folks here who do the hardware hacking and say, okay, we want to take. I think the first two people who went through that were Tom Liston and Justin Searle. They went through our project, which we internally called Project Bootstrap. And you send them a whole bunch of gear and some lessons and some daily mentoring, and basically bring them up to the point where they can hack smart meters. They can hack the rest of the smart grid, and that effort, we've been doing that over many years, continuing to do it with people. But even the first two people who went through that, it was amazingly successful. They both came out with really, really strong skills and helped write the NIST framework for attacking SCADA, for attacking ICS, and made names for himself in the space. So part of the way we work is we assume from the get-go that every single person coming in is going to be good at something and is going to need mentoring and training in the rest. And we do that. It's not just in 1 week trainings. It's just constant. But honestly, that's one of the big things I like about working here. Because when I say, like, okay, I've employed these people, so I have to mentor them. To just say I have to mentor the people below me is almost incredibly arrogant. It's like, I have to mentor them. I have to make sure they get mentored by other people, and I have to make sure I get mentored by them. And that's, and so we're all teaching each other. So I think that's the start of the message I'd have for somebody who's at a firm where it's like, yes, all of our, the people on a team doing the work are senior. But I guess the other part that I'd say, and part of the reason I wanted to come on the podcast and talk about this, guys, was I also do a good number of talks and a certain amount of work at higher education institutions. And so I'm running into students, especially grad students, but even undergrads all the time. And they say, how do I get into this field? How do I get into information security? It sounds really, really, really fun. And part of the answer for me is, and I just got asked this a few days ago at North Dakota's cybersecurity conference. I got asked by so many students. I did a keynote for a few hundred people, and then afterwards, all day long, I was getting approached by students who were asking, how do I get into information security? And the first thing I said to them was like, well, first of all, I don't know why everyone's so afraid to talk to infosec if they're not in infosec. I don't know if it's seeing the, if it's hearing about DEF CON and Ms. Berlin, I can see on a video camera right now has DEF CON goon behind her, right? And I remember, I think the first time that I heard about the DEF CON goons, I was speaking at DEF CON 7, I think, and there are these goons, and they're all these big people with red shirts on, kind of, with attitudes. And I'm like, oh God, and I just, and maybe the idea is, maybe they think that the hackers, that because what we're doing, at least in the movies, is kind of patently aggressive. Maybe they think that we're really aggressive and we're not welcoming. And what I said to the students was like, we are welcoming AF. We are like, you talk to any of us about what we do and you won't be able to shut us up.
I've never been called aggressive or intimidating.
She is fierce and has been known to throw poo at times.
Well, you haven't beat me up yet, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Right on.
I haven't tended to piss the goons off, but I mean, the thing I said to them was, take whatever you're doing. Like if you're a college student, if you're a grad student, if you're somebody who codes Go by day, or for that matter, if you code Perl by day, and you want to learn about infosec, go and talk to some infosec people and tell them about what you're doing. And most of all, and this is the most important thing I'll say tonight, I'm sure. But most of all, talk about what you're doing with some passion. Give them something to empathize with. Give them something to grasp onto. Give us something to, besides just, I really want to learn about infosec. How do I do it? Tell me what you're doing. Tell me what you're passionate about. Let me see that you like this stuff, that it's not going to just be a paycheck, because that's never a great motivator. Show me that technology or that problem solving is what you geek on, or what you grok hardcore, what you enjoy. And you'll find when you're having that conversation with anybody, including people in a different field that you want to break into, they get excited by your excitement. Mm-hmm. And that excitement makes them then want to share with you. I mean, the biggest thing that happens at security conferences outside of the talks, like you can go to a security conference and do hallway con, never walk into a talk, and you will learn so much, and people will learn from you. And, I'm going to go to talk to somebody who's not in infosec yet. They're going to say they program Go by day. And I'm going to ask, well, what's Go good for? Why should I get into that if I've been playing with Python or C? And they're going to tell me about concurrency and really fast prototyping. And they're going to tell me about just badass modern language constructs. And I'm going to get excited as hell. And I might tell them about something I'm doing. And we'll both get excited, and we'll keep in touch after that, for another year or something. And in my mind, the best way to get into infosec is to talk to people, is to communicate and build relationships and find out there are more opportunities than you ever realized. So that'd be my most important 2 cents or $2.
Yeah, I think the excitement and the drive behind it helps a long way into getting into anything that you're passionate about. I've had a couple different people that I've mentored, a handful of people that I've mentored so far, and others that have outright asked for mentorships and then been very disappointed or disgusted that you're not just handing them things, that you're asking them their thoughts and their opinions and to do stuff and to, work on stuff together. And it's not just a kind of a handout. Yeah. And those are the ones that always kind of get under my skin, but it's nice to have, the best mentorships I've had are ones where you don't define the fact that they're a mentorship.
Oh, that's also good thought.
Yeah. So just people that are super excited to learn from you, and you're super excited to learn from them. And it's just kind of fluid.
Yeah. So Brad, you teach people in class, but you're also a big advocate of mentoring. How is the dynamic between teacher and student and mentor and mentee different?
It's not really that different, honestly, because my students that come over and we chat for hours upon a night over and over and over, they become friends. And at that point, it's not really, I look at them as a student. I look at them as someone that I need to either train to get hired or hopefully hire them for my own.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a different caveat for me. I'm a young, I'm 37. I started teaching in 2014. I have, a mohawk and blue hair or pink hair. So it seems and Dr. Infosec, he was the guy that got me into teaching at MSU. He's the one that was like, hey, you can relate. And it seems like that's actually a thing, being able to relate to them on topics that they're now seeing instead of being some crusty old dude in his 60s trying to teach, COBOL. They're not going to really get entertained or even care about that. So I think the culture, too, that I have, since I'm really open and I walk into my class and I'm like, hey, it's time to put your big boy and big girl panties on. You're going to hear words that come out of my mouth that a lot of other instructors are not going to say. But again, we're all adults and we're going to learn from each other. And if you don't like it, GTFO, go to the other guy's class.
Right. A bit of tough love then, yeah.
It's the easiest way to weed out the ones that don't want to be there.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Very cool. All right. So, we're talking about how we're trying to make it so easy for retooling, but the person that wants to do that, there's a lot of, I don't want to call it FUD, but there is some fear, uncertainty, and doubt that is inherent to jumping off into the unknown. I mean, there may also be some issues with pay. I mean, if you're a Google code developer and you want to become infosec guy, you're making $250,000 a year as a Go developer, and you want to move over into a consulting gig where you're going to take roughly 50-60% pay cut, depending on, the type of, job you want to do, but you're really passionate about it. Is there any way to alleviate that? Because, I mean, obviously there's going to be some, retooling.
Have a rich spouse.
Have a rich spouse. Okay. Well, that's possible.
Don't sign a non-compete.
Yeah.
Don't sign a non-compete.
Yeah.
Well, how hard is that? Because I have been told by my friends that are looking for jobs that they often get hit with those kinds of things where they can't work outside of work in that case. Is it just...
See, I'm lucky. I didn't have to sign a non-compete because I told them I'm not signing a non-compete because of the wording, and they just haven't made me do it.
Right. Right.
And I'll probably be forced to do it at some point, but another option, and the reason why I said I wouldn't do a non-compete is because of my work with charities and nonprofits. I may not be getting paid, but I'm still doing the work. Mm-hmm. And they were like, you still need to sign this. And I'm like, not until you reword this.
Right. Right. I had kind of the same problem when I started working at my current job. I was doing the podcast and I was like, look, I got to be able to continue doing the podcast. And my whole thinking was, I don't necessarily want to work at a place that's not going to let me continue to do the podcast because they should see value in what I'm doing as both a person and as somebody who's constantly learning and doing that. And to stifle that would probably be a big red flag for anybody who is trying to stop that from occurring. So... Makes sense. I've
been lucky enough to not be anywhere that's had a non-compete. Either places that weren't strictly infosec or, the last place that I was at didn't really believe in them. Mm-hmm. So they had a pretty good outlook on a lot of things like that. So cool. And this place that I'm currently at, same thing.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian, when you asked the question about how do you get people who are not in the industry involved?
Yes.
one of my buddies, Ed McCabe, gave me a great thing that I've been utilizing, that a lot of local places have meetup groups.
Oh, yeah.
So dentists and doctors and things like that. I've actually been going to these events and telling them, and just doing a presentation on infosec, and it's actually rather turned it around a little bit, because I'm getting them more involved and they're seeing the value in it. So That's what I would comment on for your original question.
No, that makes complete sense. And up here in the Seattle area, pretty much every day of the month, there's some kind of developer meetup going on, like Node.js or Go or, Scala or God knows what. I'm sure Mr. J can, talk about the Seattle side. I'm more on the east side, but there's a ton of those meetups that are going on. So that makes perfect sense. So yeah, I guess it would be the equivalent of the small business chamber of commerce or whatever in a small town. But if you're trying to get, if you're trying to recruit developers to come over to help you work on applications, I guess that would be a good way to find a hiring pool to come out of. So all right, so I'm going to ask you both a question, and Mr. Betcher, please feel free. I don't know if you're on mute or whatever, but
he fell asleep.
He fell asleep. That's what it was. Yeah. So a lot of jobs that I hear, people are interviewing for, it's like they always hear the phrase, they must be able to hit the ground running. And it doesn't strike me as that's being a very positive environment. And again, if you're trying to retool, being told, well, you got to hit the ground running means, well, I kind of need to know everything up front without, having that mentorship. So is companies that still use that term or feel like that, they can't hire somebody who can't start working and making billable hours immediately, is that a sign of immaturity in that company?
You want to start, Jay, or should I?
I'll let you take that one to start.
All right. So we actually use that term.
Oh.
And the reason why is because we throw them into the shit right off the bat. However, the shit that they get thrown into is doing social engineering, email phishing campaigns, phone phishing campaigns, and ASV scans. So they're not doing the real stuff where they're going on site, trying to physically break in, doing internals or anything like that.
Right.
So they're actually billable, but their billable is rather small. So I don't expect my consultants or my junior guys to fully be billable for 3 to 6 months, because they need to be able to shadow. But the easy stuff, like spinning up Phishing Frenzy campaign with Lucy, which, it's a commercial tool, just spinning up one of those, or making simple phone calls, they're still showing value as, a new hiree. And then it's 2 hours out of their day, and then the rest of the time they get to be able to either hop on, a Zoom channel and watch another consultant, or just shadow physically another consultant, because I really don't care where you're at. You can do external scans for ASVs, and you can do social engineering from anywhere on the planet. I can just ship you to where another consultant is, and you can sit with him to figure out exactly what you need to do and what skills you need to build on to become that person.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I'd say I'd echo that it's that. So in a consulting firm, the economics are annoyingly simple at times. It's you're bringing people on. You want to be able to have them do work for clients. That was that's usually the goal of bringing them on. Sure. And yet, at the same time, there's absolutely nuance. I mean, one example there is if you have someone who's coming on, they've got to be strong in something. And if they're strong in that something, well, great. I just have to make sure that we have enough engagements with that something while we strengthen them up on other things. And to be honest, that's kind of that's really how I think that's really a big part of how consulting companies, or at least, well, I've only seen the inside of so many. So that's really a lot of how we work is like, okay, this person came on, they're a really strong network penetration tester, and we're going to need to, but on web applications, they've taken the class but have no experience. We're going to have to build up their confidence on web applications, and so that'll be, and similarly, that'll be like, okay, we're going to take them to school, and some of that sometimes that's some internal training time. I've worked with some of our consultants before, and worked on their web app skills. And we have a number of other people who've done that inside here. Other times it's just saying, okay, we're gonna, we have this web application that we're testing. It needs 2 people, so you're going to be the third person in that 2-person team, and you're going to learn as much as you can from being on that team. And shockingly, sometimes that third person is the person who gets the most juice. You're just like, wow, you found some really great stuff. And you're just like, okay, don't be too stuck on your expectations, because you'll be surprised what people can do when you throw them into the deep end.
Cool.
I think that's the other thing. I think a lot of us are, I think a lot of people are willing to try throwing someone into the deep end one way or another. And trial by fire, I swear, is one of the best ways I've ever learned anything.
Sure.
Go and take the class without taking its prerequisite, and it'll be hard, but you'll learn so much more that way.
Yeah, and I feel if a company hires based on those troubleshooting skills and problem solving, and how the person's personality is going to fit in with the team and all that kind of stuff, it's still definitely extremely daunting, just because I've done it a couple times and I'm always worried that I'm going to get fired every day, just because I never have any idea what I'm doing. When you make a jump like that, like, it's super scary. Yeah. But if you have a company that hires you based on that kind of stuff, and it's like, oh, it's all right, you'll get this eventually. If you have to repeat it a couple times, we didn't hire you because we knew you knew this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, I'll say 2 things that people might find encouraging. The first one is just my own experience. Ms. Berlin, I found the same thing. The very first job I had in infosec was a very long time ago. It was back in 1999. But I remember the first month, at least, I was convinced every day that I was going to get fired. That someone was going to realize I didn't know everything already and fire me.
Yep.
And I had no idea that, no, my bosses were, to use Brian's word here, were mature enough to know that, that's not what we got you for. We may have asked you a bunch of trivia questions as part of the interview, but very much more than what you know is how quickly you can learn, and how well you can learn, and what and what kind of approach you take to problem solving.
Right.
So that'd be the first thing that I hope is encouraging to someone.
Man, I still worry I'm going to get fired every day.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that ended at the end of 1 month, or if at the end of 1 month I was really happy because I was a state employee, and my job, there's something in the state that said, that you got a week of severance pay if they fired you after a month, or
that's
maybe
great.
it was after 3 months. And then I think I probably calmed down. I'm like, okay, at least I'll be able to make it a week or 2.
Right.
But it was, but I mean that honestly. Most people in the field, no matter how senior they are, still have a certain amount of imposter syndrome that comes up, where you're like, shit, I'm really not as good as I should be, and yet once you realize that most all of us are walking around with that, you're like, oh, okay, that's just, that fear is just there to keep me pushing hard,
right.
To learn.
Right.
And I guess that would be that's the other thing I'd like to say that I hope people coming into the field, or switching focuses or subfields, would feel encouraging is, I remember one of the things I liked the most about IT in general, and infosec in particular, was that this is not a field where you're supposed to know it all and then stop learning. point you come in at, you have to keep learning. And if you don't keep learning, here's the pressure. If you don't keep learning, in 5 years, you're darn near useless, or at least you feel like it until you get sharp again.
Right.
And but the positive is that we all know that we have to keep learning. So, I remember my first year at a job, and I've got books on the shelf, and I'm opening them up constantly. I'm like, how do I get another book if I want another book? And they're like, oh yeah, we have an unlimited book budget. Get as many as you get as many books as you want. I'm like, what? Really? They're like, yeah. How the hell else are we all going to learn?
Right. Right.
And it was just like, okay, I'm talking to people who've been in this for 10 years, and they're focused on how they're going to keep learning, not just looking at references, but continue learning.
Right.
So, cool.
Yeah. Well, one thing to add to that, and Jay is completely right, but what I learned when I was at Acuant Labs was we had homework, and homework was great. So basically, they would give us assigned tasks when we were on the bench or not billable during our time when, we were boots on the ground for our 2 hours for social engineering. The rest of the time was building your external skills on things that are outside of scope that you're really good at. And they would literally give you pinpoints and milestones that you'd have to talk to your mentor for to be able to progress through the onboarding. And I've taken that, and I'm now implementing one at my current company just for the same thing, because if I'm hiring someone with no IT, because it might be what I'm up against based on partners and their requirements for the amount of people we have, I need to have them quick and dirty, up to speed to a junior level in 2 months. So giving them like Metasploitable 2 or Metasploitable 3, or have them working through VulnHub, but we have them give the commands and the ways you do screenshots, because that's one thing that I've noticed that no one really talks about is you can be the greatest pen tester on the planet, but if you can't verbally or through the written word on your report show the client what is wrong and how to fix it,
right,
you're not really giving them any added value to what they paid for.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, documentation is not always fun, and I keep hearing about that from people who do pen testing and red teaming on the reg. So yeah, I mean, it's a necessary evil, but you have to have some kind of output for your skill to show, for a product. So that makes sense.
I mean, think of like Walmart. If Walmart hired some, mom and pop pen testing shop, and, they got partners with FusionX and like all the big companies for red teaming and stuff, and mom and pop shop comes in and it's just a regurgitated Nessus report, but they paid $1 million for it.
Right. There's
no value right there.
Right. Right. No, that makes sense. So we're talking about, the little things that people can do when you bring somebody in who's junior. You guys mentioned phishing frameworks, social engineering, those are the junior jobs. So when you pair somebody up with a more senior person, what does the engagement look like for that? When you have somebody who's interning or being the journeyman or the apprentice to a senior person on an engagement. So you've got the guy who's running the engagement. How does the apprentice fit in to that dynamic?
I'm happy to go first here.
Okay.
So
my phone's dying, so I'm trying to call in from my cell.
Okay.
Okay. So for us, that person who's trying to build their skills, at first, what it looks like is they become the third person on a two-person team, or they become the fourth person on a 3-person team. It's pretty rare in Guardians that we do a one person to a task. Maybe with a phishing campaign, maybe if it's a phishing engagement, that might be a one person thing. But little of what we do involves only one person. So anyway. But that said, so you have a 2-person or 3-person task, and the person who's not sharpened that skill yet becomes the becomes an additional person who's not responsible for billing any hours, but is there to learn, and they're going to learn by doing. Similar to infosec security, infosec consulting isn't as brutal as as surgery, where they're like, okay, watch one, see one, do one.
And don't kill the person.
Teach one. That just sounds brutal. Are you kidding me? I'm gonna watch one. The next one is one that I do, and right after that, I'm a teacher. So luckily, we're not that. InfoSec doesn't tend to be that brutal, but yeah, that's basically our model, is that we're going to bring somebody on to be first the unavailable resource on a task for a little while, and for a few, and then once they start to show during that time that we're not taking out of the amount of time we scoped, that we estimated for the engagement, then we'll start to bring them on as the junior member of the team. So if it's 2 people, to be the, hopefully that's a 3-person thing, but maybe it's a 2-person thing, and they're the lesser experienced person, and they're going to bring some real juice to it. We do that. I don't want to say that we do that with every engagement. We do that with a minority of engagements. But that's us still. That's us. It's just where we are, and it's been really effective. You can learn other areas. You basically need this combination of kind of theory, whether you call it book learning or reading websites or training classes. You need that, and then you need experience. And of course, that's that need experience thing is the beast for anybody who's thinking about, asking for an internship job or a junior job at a company. They're like, darn it, everybody wants experience. How do I get experience? And,
right.
And actually, that's where I have another couple thoughts. One of the cool things for me, this is not how it was when I started in this field, but one of the cool things for me is that at this point, we have so many opportunities. We have so many different ways that you can get good at something that you want to do for a living, that are at this point free. And one of the biggest ones that I like are these kinds of capture the flag exercises that are online. So there's, the Hack the Box. I think that's Hack the Box EU, and there are just a ton of. I really like this site called VulnHub. Mm-hmm. It's VULNHUB.com. And VulnHub has all of these virtual machines that have been set up as one-person capture the flags. You download one of these things to boot to root. You start it up in VMware or VirtualBox, and your job is, starting with having booted the thing, you have to break into it and get to root. And there are usually 3 flags along the way. That number can vary. And the thing I like about VulnHub is it isn't just that there are these things, that there are these things to try to hack on, but it's also that there are walkthroughs. A bunch of the people who have won who have beat the vulnerable machine have then written up and told you how they did it. And what's really fun is if you read through how they did it, you're going to find that at least a number of them will show you, like, I tried this and that didn't work. And so I tried this and that worked, and then I got stuck again. And so I tried these 3 things and it didn't work. So finally I just threw the damn thing away and I walked away from it and I went and did something else. And 2 days later I came back to it and I was like, oh, I got it. And I tried this other thing and that worked. And so you find out what hacking, what attack work, what hacking is like. You find out what programming is like. You find out what every bit of problem solving is like. There's a heck of a lot of trying a few different things and doubling back and eventually getting it. And then as you build experience, the first thing you try tends to work more often than it did when you first started. And that starts to make you faster. But it's virtually never like it is in the movies. It's never that, that first thing you tried, it worked perfectly, and that got you to the next thing, and then you tried exactly the right thing there, and somebody had a gun to your head while you were doing it all, and you were totally distracted, and yet you broke RSA encryption and whatnot or whatever. It's problem solving, and it's really neat. And when you see that even the people that have tons of experience are still are still having to try different things and pound on it and walk away and come back, it becomes a lot less daunting. So, I want to say that there are a number of online things. Look for whatever skill you're trying to build. If what you're trying to build is intrusion detection, then go and see if somebody's created an online exercise or capture the flag for that.
Right.
To be honest, a big part of the way I got into this field was I was a grad student in mathematics, and I built some computers because they were still a little expensive back then. I built some computers from spare parts, like kind of following instructions that I found online, and buying parts that were no longer part of computers for cheap, and getting Linux to run on them, and building my own little, it might have been a 10base2 Ethernet network.
Easy. Wow. Okay.
In my bedroom, and kind of following online stuff and working through, like, how do I build myself a little network of servers to do a thing? And so that's the other one. Like, it's so much easier now. You just need one computer in VMware, one computer in VirtualBox or whatever.
Right.
But make
all that hardware taking up all the
oh my God,
space and energy.
Yeah. You don't have to damn near electrocute yourself like I did back then.
Right.
I remember blowing a fuse and being really lucky that I hadn't been the fuse that was blown. That was old power supplies, but anyway, but but yeah, there's just get into this and try it. And honestly, that was what made my first employer say, "Oh my God, you've got to work here now." It wasn't that I had any on the job experience. I had book reading, and I had been screwing around with it at home, and what I could do so far gave them the confidence that I'd be able to do that I would be able to hit the ground running, that I would be able to be useful while I learn the rest with help.
Right.
And that, I think, is what we're all looking for as employers.
Nice.
Yep.
So, Brad, same question.
What was that question again?
Sure.
So,
Based on what he said, is how to get in it without any experience.
Yep.
So the way I tell my students, and I'm probably this jackass that does this, but getting a cert, a low-level cert that is DoD certified, will get you doors opened in the government right off the bat. Because the DoD has a directive that blah and blah and blah certs.
I have that blah
the
cert.
Security Plus tile crap, but opens doors right off the bat.
Yep.
It's only $300, but if you're a student, you can get the student discount, or you can get the double up, where you get the first take at it, and then if you fail, you get your retake. But
Okay.
that's from, a more lucrative aspect if you're having money to just throw $300. What I always ask is, are you actually actively researching anything? Like, are you Googling, or are you having other people Google it for you?
Right.
And then I talk about that. Like, what's your interest? Because I'll hire people with zero IT. Because like I said, that can be taught. It's the problem-solving skills that I care about.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying side projects are pretty important to you when you're hiring somebody?
Not at all, honestly. If your GitHub has 30 different things and my GitHub has like one, you're going to be great. However, that doesn't mean your side projects are doing good for me. What it does mean is you're motivated and you have a drive. So that's more shining, in my opinion.
Uh-huh.
But then I also have friends, and this is just one specific one recently, that is being mocked because his GitHub has like 0 things, but I know full well that he's got like X amount of O days under his belt. So GitHub repos and things like that shouldn't matter, in my opinion. Now, it does matter to other people, but side projects is great.
in my mind, like just donating your time. You can get experience just donating your time to a nonprofit or, a charity. Hey, I want to redo your website. Hey, let's secure this a little bit more. Hey, let's do this. Or just going and networking. Networking was key for me.
Right.
Without me networking, I would not be in the position I am today, because one of the friends that I made an acquaintance of on Twitter, the Amanda, Snow's husband, I wouldn't have the job that I'm in right now because he made the introduction that got me the principal position at the company that I now work for. So I really think that is huge, the networking aspect. Volunteering at cons, whether they're local or national, is going to be stellar in my mind. I want to see your drive and what you care about and the things that make you tick more than your skill set, because we can put you through the program. We can get you the tools. If we have the money, we can send you to the training or have you shadow. You might not be as good as that other person, but if you have a drive, you will get to that point on your own with little to no help after the fact.
Right on. Sounds awesome. Yeah. I definitely agree with the volunteering at cons. You get to meet a lot of people there, whether or not you're kicking them out of the con or not. Or, you meet Miss Berlin. She's, fierce, and she's going to...
I'm not a security goon, though, so I guess I could kick people out, but I don't.
Citizens arrest. Citizens.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Just take pictures of me, Amanda, when I come, if I ever do again.
Right?
Fantastic. How hard is it to volunteer for those things, though? I mean, to be vetted for a conference. I mean, you can't just walk up in there and go, hey, I'm a warm body. I mean, don't you have to kind of know somebody?
Some of them you can.
Oh, really? Okay.
Some of them, sometimes they really hurt for volunteers.
Okay.
And you'll definitely work a whole lot. Like the first time I volunteered with Tool, I was working like 10-hour days.
Wow. Okay.
And you didn't really get to do a whole lot during the day during the con, but you met a whole lot of really cool people, and just, you still learn a lot as you're volunteering.
Right. Okay.
Another one. Look at Circle City Con. They got tweets going out all the time about volunteers. DerbyCon. All you got to do is make a reach out on Twitter, and I guarantee one of, the 3 founders there would be like, oh, yeah, hey, email me here. And all the B-sides, come on, B-sides they're all small, but they still need people.
True. Mm-hmm. Very true. Okay. Well, we've gone over the hour. I expected that. We can definitely hold off on that other topic, Mr. J, for the next time that we have you on. I want to thank you both for coming, and I appreciate that. Mr. Dr. sno0ose, how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to discuss maybe the class you're teaching, where you're teaching, how your company mentors people, or maybe people who are looking for a job might want to hit you up and discuss?
Twitter,
and that
that's sno0ose.
Okay. And
how do you spell that?
Wait, I got to do this. Yeah, I got to spell it. sno0ose.
Oh, I keep missing an O. I only put 2 O's in it. I didn't realize it had 3. Okay.
There's a 0 in the middle, though.
A 0, yeah.
It's a 0. Yeah. Not an O.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Cool. Okay. And that's that is how they can get a hold of you. So you said you're a combat medic vet. Does being a veteran, and I'll ask Jay this too, does it make any difference in hiring? Because I've seen a lot of organizations that will put in job descriptions, we're looking for protected veteran status or, disabled veterans. Are they doing that out of the kindness of their heart, or they're just doing it because they want government, handouts or, government, pluses?
So you do get put in the front because I am a disabled vet. I'm like 60% disabled or something like that.
Okay.
And for government work, 100%, you're going to get put to the front of the list.
Okay.
With companies that are vet friendly, you're definitely get put to the front of the list. Cool. However, what I've also seen is non-vet people that have the same skill set can also be in the same interview process. They just have that 10-point preference on the back end when it comes to the gov stuff. When it's just publicly or privately owned companies, that 10-point preference doesn't really matter unless they're like a gov contractor when I was working at Lockheed.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I know a couple private pen test firms and stuff that's just kind of their preference. They try and reach out and find as many disabled or regular vets or whatever as possible.
That's cool. All right. Jay, how about you? You must hire a lot of veterans or look for that moniker?
I'll say that we don't look for it. We don't look for it at all. We do, on the other hand, end up hiring a good number of veterans.
Cool.
So I don't know why. I just know that we're not seeking them out, but we have found veterans with great skills, and sometimes we don't really realize they're a veteran until we're looking at the resume.
Right.
Until we're like taking a second look at the resume after a really good interview. Sure. But we have veterans. We have multiple veterans on staff right now, and we've had veterans with us since the beginning. But it's never something I think we've ever used in any way to win work. We should probably take a look at that. Maybe there's one we could bid on that we don't realize we should bid on.
And you're welcome. So anyway, Mr. J, how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to discuss?
Yeah.
I didn't hear that last part. What was that?
Oh, I said security clearances go pretty far on bids, let me tell you.
Fair enough.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so how do you find me? So the Twitters are always good. So at InGuardians, INGUARDIANS. Okay. Or I'm at Jay Beale, JAYBEALE.
Nice.
And of course, go take a look at InGuardian's website. Look at our blog and so on. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and all the things. So,
excellent. All right.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Mr. Betcher, you've been very introspective tonight, and I appreciate that. You're actually thinking like 3 steps ahead. You're working on our show net for, in the future, and I appreciate that. How would people get a hold of you if they wanted to talk about anything that you're doing malware-wise or, LogMD-wise or what have you?
You can hit me on Twitter at BetcherPwned or IMF Security log-md.com. Any one of those venues would suffice.
Okay. Ms. Berlin, last but not least, how would people get a hold of you?
On Twitter at InfoSystir, INFOSYSTIR, or on our Slack channel.
Excellent. All right. So the podcast at BrakeSec on Twitter, BRAKESEC. You can follow me on Twitter, Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE. We have some announcements real quick. I want to get to them very, very quickly. We have a reverse engineering and assembly class that's going to be taught by Professor Matt Miller, who teaches at the University of Nebraska at Kearney. He's going to be doing about an 8-week class with us. Starts on the 2nd of April, and there's going to be information in the show notes on how you can sign up for that and a syllabus that you can look at to find out what's going on with that. So yes, please do so. We've got about 8 people, I think, in the class now. So, there's plenty of room. We can have up to 50 people if we want to. So it'll be over Zoom and it'll be on a Monday night. So just like we had with Miss Berlin's kill chain class, which went incredibly well. So, yeah. The next thing, SeaSec East, my local meetup here in this Redmond/Bellevue area, which is also like on the other side of Lake Washington in Seattle. We're going to have our April meetup on the 4th at Black Lodge Research in Redmond, which is right off the 202. You can go to our meetup site, which is also in the show notes, and you can find that out. So we have a very active Slack channel as well. BrakeSec Slack has over 1,100 people, 1,100 accounts, probably about 350 active. Very active Slack channel. We have a job board. We also have a career advice board where people can actually put their resumes in. So it's like a continual resume review. So if you're interested in doing some of that retooling that we talked about in the show tonight, and you don't feel confident that your resume might be up to snuff, put it up in there, and we can critique it and help you understand where you might be missing some things or how you can flesh things out to make them look better. Thanks to our Patreon. We have a Patreon for Tip Jar. If you find value in the show that you just listened to or any of the other 150 to 200 shows that we have, if you'd like to leave us a couple of bucks, that would be great. I'd like to thank Tim for, pledging $5. So $5 a month. So he's helping out with hosting and stuff. So Jay, you've got a class at Black Hat coming up.
Yes, I do. Thank you. It's a good time to sign up. The class is called Aikido on the Command Line, and it's a Linux lockdown class where we're going to have all the students are actually going to get a machine to take home and keep, and it's going to have intentionally vulnerable capture the flag machines on it, and we'll compromise each of them, and then we'll turn around and apply some defenses, and then see that our exploits don't work anymore. Nice. That's what we do, and it's been going on for a long time. It's a really good class.
Cool. Yeah, and there'll be a link in our show notes to that. Jay, if you could put the link in the show notes, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Anyway,
do that right now.
All right, cool. So that you can hear the podcast on iTunes, Google Play Store. Please leave feedback if you'd like. I also want to mention Meat Shield because he tweeted out something today that he only listens to the show to make sure people aren't talking crap about him. I'm talking crap about you.
That dude's a jerk.
He's a total jerk store.
I get to do it.
Oh.
Fuck you, Meat.
Snoo says, "Hey, Meat."
He's my buddy.
Awesome. So, we're way over, so I appreciate everybody coming out. This has been Breaking Down Security this week. Have a great week. Be nice to one another, please, and we will talk to you again next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.